What is something they taught you in elementary school that is not true anymore? The food pyramid. Sponsored by Kellogg's and the corn and sugar industry. You won't always have a calculator on you to work things out. I was told this all the way through high school. I graduated in 2005. It didn't take long for them all to be proven wrong. I graduated high school in 2017, and I was still told that on occasion by some teachers. That I could be anything I wanted when I grew up. Source: I'm not typing this on my bat phone. Nonsense. You're just a username change away from your dream. You got a point though. I before E, except after C, in the UK schools aren't allowed to teach it anymore because there are more exceptions than words that follow it. I before E except after C, or when sounding like A as in neighbor and way, and on weekends and holidays and all throughout May, and you'll never be right no matter what you say. Barkson. We were taught that there are different zones on the tongue for different tastes: sweet, salty, bitter, etc. Apparently this is bullcrap. Yep, and there's also a fifth taste now: umami, aka savory. I always believed herbs, garlic, steak, etc. didn't really fall into the sweet, salty, sour, bitter categories. Pluto is a planet. I was taught that Pluto is a god. I was taught that Pluto is a dog. In 1980, the entire USA will convert to the metric system. One of my textbooks even had a note from the authors, publishers, urging students to write to their politicians about moving to the metric system. I did not do this. I'm sorry, America. I always wondered whose fault this was. Thanks a lot. You will have to write everything in cursive one day. Outside of my signature, I'm still waiting for the day I have to write anything in cursive. For signatures now, you can jury write the first letter of your name, then just scribble for a bit and you're done. I sign my name dozens of times a day on any normal day, and on busy days can end up signing it 100 plus times. My name is fairly short and only a few syllables, but there's no way in hell I'm signing it any other way except for how you mentioned. Get the first letter right and just move on. As long as my scribbles look at least somewhat the same when signing checks, then nothing else matters. There are 4 billion people in the world. TBF, there are still 4 billion people in the world, but with 3 billion more and counting. Cursive is important to know if you ever want to go to college. Lol, right. I had so many professors expressly forbid us from writing in cursive, and some even went so far as to tell us that if our print wasn't legible we would have to redo the paper or type it up. Fun fact, some neurological conditions can result in printing being basically unreadable, while cursive looks just fine. When I was 5, my teacher told me my hair would grow curly if I ate my bread crusts. I'm Chinese. I freaking scarfed down all those bread crusts for nothing. I was told if I ate the bread crust it would help me learn how to whistle. Oh, the lies. And they told me crusts would put hair on my chest. Nothing I strived for ever. Or the European currencies. Good for crossword puzzles and pub quizzes though. Most of them are still there. A bunch of European countries aren't in the EU, and of those that are, a bunch still use their old currencies. That's because the European Union is different from the Euro agreement. The Eurozone involves a lot of economical politics that isn't part of the European Union. Greece ended up with an economical crash because the central bank of the Euro agreement was in Brussels rather than each individual country. This was later adjusted when countries realized the issue of not being able to handle inflation on its own. The countries that didn't join the Euro agreement naturally isn't part of that, and not only kept their own currency, they also have their own central banks. Fax machines are the future. But Abe Lincoln cold gotten a fax from a samurai. Sadly, however, he was assassinated without ever knowing the joy of using a doorknob, which wouldn't be invented 4 years after his death. Sneezing into your hands is an effective way to stop the spread of disease. High five to that. Only if we invite everyone to the high five party. Dad bursts into the room. Why did they change math? Math is math. The borders and names of many European countries. I was born in 1978. Yeah, when Yugoslavia broke up, I was like, ah, frick those kids. Good luck learning Ljubljana. Sorry millennials. Poor kids learning geography between 1917, 1918. Why do we need a Poland? Wonder Bread builds strong bodies in 12 ways. The cafeteria only served Wonder Bread and kept this slogan hanging on the wall to remind us why. The FTC demanded an ad slogan be withdrawn after Wonder Bread added calcium, the 13th way, and claimed it improved children's brain function and memory. There's a communist country called the USSR led by Mikhail Gorbachev that we are kind of at war with and might nuke us someday. It was Nikita Khrushchev in my day, and in mine it was Stalin. One of my earliest school memories, early 60s, was upon seeing a map of the world. I commented about the matching contours between South America and Africa. The teacher told me it was just a coincidence. I also recall an old science textbook that talked about the origin of the universe. While it mentioned the Big Bang, the favored theory was that of a steady-state universe. The Big Bang was regarded as an attempt by religious groups to insert creationism into science. I remember in my undergrad one of my GEA professors saying that continental drift was not an accepted theory when he was in school. Crazy how quickly things can change. It's funny, by the time I took my GEA courses, the professors were all like, yeah, plate tectonics is basically the basis for all modern geology and the field made no sense before then. The countries of East Germany and West Germany, now known as Germany. Pedantic alert, that's not what happened. There were two Germanys, the Federal Republic of Germany, commonly known as West Germany, and the German Democratic Republic, commonly known as East Germany. What happened wasn't a unification of the two Germanys, but an annexation of East Germany by West Germany. Today's Germany is still the Federal Republic of Germany it was back then, now just with more territory and people. Exactly. From Wikipedia, the post-1990 United Germany is not a successor state, but an enlarged continuation of the former West Germany. The enlarged Federal Republic of Germany retained the West German seats in international organizations including the European Economic Community, later the European Union, NATO, and the United Nations. Memberships in the Warsaw Pact and other international organizations to which East Germany belonged ended because East Germany ceased to exist. You won't have a calculator in your pocket everywhere you go. My math teacher tried to tell us this last year. How out of touch is your math teacher? That animals like bears that go through hibernation are sleeping for weeks and months. They just slow down their metabolism. Hold up, one, that's not true. Bears are just sleepy during the winter to conserve energy. They are not true hibernators. You can wake them up pretty easily. Their heart rate and body temperature drops slightly while they sleep, but that's it. Woodchucks, for example, are true hibernators. Their body temperature goes from around 98 deg F to under 40 deg F. Their heartbeat goes from around 80 BPM to 5 BPM or lower, and their continually growing teeth pause their growth. They might get up every few weeks to snack and poop, but other than that you can't wake them up at all. Construction crews will sometimes find them, move them aside, and then put them back, and rebury them once they're done working, all without the woodchuck ever waking up. I was told the slaves were treated kindly, and did not want to leave the plantation. I questioned it, and was sent to the hallway the rest of the day. Looking at you, Texas. I was taught the same. I mean, there's a difference between not wanting to leave the plantation and choosing to stay on the plantation over being homeless, because freeing the slaves didn't exactly automatically give them a whole bunch of career paths. Exactly. And especially for the slaves that were born here in America, the plantation was the only place they knew. It isn't like they were like, woohoo, we are free, and could just up and go buy a house and get a job and make a living. In most places it was still illegal for them to do any of that. So yeah, not wanting to leave the plantation wasn't a thing, because slaves were so loyal to their masters, and they liked it there. It was more because they were told they were free, but had no means to survive. I remember being told in 4th grade how we kids shouldn't watch The Simpsons, because it's a terrible show, because Bart says bad things, and will soon be taken off the air. Somewhat off topic, but when I visited the US I was shocked to discover that South Park was rated 17+, R-rated. I went to a summer camp in California when I was I think 13 or 14, and one evening a small group I was with was just relaxing watching videos and we decided to watch some Netflix. So we were trying to choose something to watch. I saw that South Park was an option as we were scrolling through, so I suggested it, and one of the chaperones told me we couldn't watch that. He seemed a bit shocked that I even suggested it, so I asked him why, and he told me that it was rated R. I'm French and Luxembourgish, and on French TV, and I think it's probably similar in other neighboring countries. When South Park was being broadcasted we only had a warning stating that it wasn't recommended / was forbidden to people under 12 years of age. When I told that to the chaperone he was a bit dumbfounded. So, I live in the US and they show edited South Park on local over-air broadcast channels. Maybe that's what you were seeing? Do not trust strangers. Most of the times they are not strangers. Today it is so much better that kids are learning about good and bad touch. Just bodily autonomy in general. Seeing my nibblings being taught from being old enough to walk that they get to choose if they give kisses and or cuddles, and there's no pleading from the grown-up kid word rules is great. No explanation needed. You don't want to give me hugs and kisses, you don't. It makes me happy that they know they can say no, and it should be respected always. I wish I'd grown up understanding that. First time seeing nibblings used in a sentence in the wild. You must get good grades to get into a good college. Then in college, you must get good grades to secure a good job. 20 years working in the corporate world in various different positions, and I've never once been asked to prove I actually even went to college, let alone got good grades. C's get degrees. In the US corporate world, having a college diploma is a requirement for most jobs. But as you said, C's get degrees, degree, or equivalent work experience. Start at a small company that's willing to hire someone without a degree, who can do the job at a lower price. When you go to a bigger corporation, they don't look past the last thing you did. If the last thing you did was get your degree, cool. If the last thing you did was the same job somewhere else, also cool. To be fair, this was taught to me at school in Mexico. If you are a boy that is attracted to boys, that means you are a girl born in a boy's body. This really messed with my psyche and ate at me for many years. I thought, if I like being a boy, then maybe at some point in my life, I will no longer be attracted to boys. I'll let time pass hoping my gayness was just a phase. This seems a little counterproductive if you're a homophobe. Different cultures have different points of view of homosexuality and gender identity. In the United States these days being trans is often considered worse than homosexuality by certain folks. In some countries, transitioning is often seen as a cure for homosexuality. Well, I just wish more people learned to plant vegetables, just like I did in elementary. There was an elementary school near where I grew up that mostly taught children skills like that and other, more nature-related skills. I also do remember my next door neighbor who went to this school did not learn to read until at least the 5th grade, so it was a pretty major tragedy. I never understood why you couldn't just learn both. Big yikes. You should definitely be able to teach both. You just make gardening your science unit, for example. Garbageman pay. Here it's a city job, unionized, good pay, overtime /night /hazard bonus pay, holidays off or extra pay, full benefits. It's hard AF work, but it is a secure job. One of those jobs where you gotta be active all day. At the end of the day you feel like you actually did a lot of work. It's really not for everyone. But then you come home to your silky smooth petite beautiful wife. She blushes as you rub your coarse thick sandpaper worker hands on her soft delicate nipples. I'm not a garbage man. If you don't go to college you'll be a loser doing manual labor. Now everyone has a degree in a diluted market with crippling debt, and trade jobs make great money with significantly less debt. I do think trade school should be a good option in terms of career choice and opportunities. The problem is that many tradesmen get their bodies badly beat out or suffer greater risk of injury. Blue collar work is tough on the body. Yeah, everyone praises trades, but never brings this up. I worked with a former electrician before. Former because he got electrocuted so bad on the job he was in the hospital and had no interest in going back, for obvious reasons. Look up when your nose is bleeding. Oh, I hated being told this. I used to get nosebleeds all the time, so it happened often. Like, sure, I'll look up, but you should be warned that the blood will trickle down my throat and make me cough blood. My older sibling used to get nosebleeds all the time when we were younger. They got one on the bus ride home one day, and the bus counselor, a kid only a couple years older than them, told them to tilt their head back. My sibling said no, and when the counselor started berating them, they did it. My sibling then coughed blood onto the counselor's face, not intentionally. They are not that type of person, but that's what happens. Anytime we got in trouble it would be on our permanent record. And a permanent record. To be fair, that's actually true today due to social media. Bro, I forgot half of that stuff the second I left. Ever heard of Leave No Child Behind? No Child Left Behind is one of the worst things ever. It meant that instead of helping the students under the material, they just got pushed up a grade they definitely were not ready for. Lots of undiagnosed learning disabilities. I believe that was the reason that some of the people who graduated next to me couldn't read a stop sign, which is probably part of why high school diplomas doesn't open up the jobs they used to. The internet is a trend. You were really taught that. It was kind of a common belief among some. That Columbus discovered America. Let's rephrase. That Columbus was a good person. I can't remember that ever being taught. Other than the fact that he existed and took a boat to the Americas, I don't think anything else about him was taught at all. Liberty Bell was rang once and cracked and never used again. Never learned that. Even though I was super young, I learned them at the bell, was significant and rung often. Cracked, was attempted to be repaired, then the crack grew, and it stopped being used in the 1840s. You can grow up to be anything you want to. Bullcrap. Athletically, I could have never been a professional baseball player, but I still turned out to be very successful in my field. The narrative needs to be changed too. You can lead a fulfilling life and be successful once you find out what you want and are skilled at. I would take issue with this in one small way. We have an unnatural fascination with raw talent in TJUSVS skill that is worked at over a lifetime as per Japan. The narrative needs to be changed to you can be good at anything you devote your time, maybe a lifetime, and energy. Anything you want is often interpreted as I'm entitled to be good because I want to be inside of my head without any effort or work. Whatever way I did math back then, they keep coming up with new ways to do it. None of them are right or wrong. They're all just different shortcuts to teach kids math. The way I did it was wrong according to my teacher, lol. You can do anything you want if you try hard enough. What a miserable lie that was. The appendix is vestigial. Explain. There's a growing body of evidence to suggest that the appendix acts as a reservoir for the gut biome that is relatively protected from the effects of severe diarrhea, thus helping to replenish the biome after GI diseases. In addition, it is also now suspected to play a role in T and B lymphocyte responses, and thus contributes to the immune system as well. The Canadian government was very nice to the natives, and gave them plenty of land and rights. Well, we did give them land. Just land nobody else wanted, and was barely survivable. Funny thing now is that everyone wants the land nobody wanted back then because resources. Now the natives, for the first time in history, can flip the bird to the government and all the corporations who want to make a buck off land nobody wanted in the first place. I'm not even gonna touch the other part, because we still find out new crap every province as well as the federal government pulled on these people. My 8th grade math teacher, when you get older you will not be carrying around a calculator wherever you go. This was the stupidest thing. Like, even if we disregard phones, calculators are still really critical for work. I work in engineering, and I would be stupid not to use a calculator. Like a freaking engineer at the time, could easily walk in and go WTF, yeah, we use calculators. The Native Americans, Indians according to my teacher, welcomed the Pilgrims and felt sorry for them because they were struggling. The Pilgrims invited them to the first Thanksgiving to thank them for their help. I found this a little sus to begin with, but I let it go because I was like 7 and more interested in making cute little hand turkeys and such. The further I went in school, the more I realized how messed up that description is. Indians weren't a monolith. Some probably did welcome the pilgrims and feel sorry for them. Fools. Yeah, there was a lot of interaction, and it wasn't 100% bad, especially when the non-native population was pretty sparse. Squanto is a fascinating historic figure, and he did act as interpreter and advisor to the pilgrims at Plymouth Colony. That part is true. If there is a tornado or nuclear holocaust, you will be perfectly safe under your desk. This wasn't so much that you'd be perfectly safe and fine. In the event of a nuclear blast, depending on your distance from it, ducking and covering behind, or in something like a ditch or barricade would offer much better protection from the initial blast wave. You'd still be screwed when it came to the fallout though. But it would buy you precious time to escape and seek treatment. For a nuclear bomb, I thought it was more that having a procedure to follow would help keep kids calm in an emergency, and that having a plan helped lessen people's fears. I'm a 90s kid, so wouldn't know firsthand. As for tornadoes, I thought duck and cover actually was safer. Get in a hallway away from the windows, crouch down so you're closer to the floor, and cover your head/neck to protect it from debris. Dewey Decimal. I guess it's still true, just ignored by most people. And how to use the library's index cards to find reference books on the topic you were looking up, so you could use the Dewey Decimal System to find them on the shelves. Index cards were obsolete by the time I went to university. I imagine Dewey Decimal is still used, but I don't think I've been in a physical library since the early 1990s. The bell doesn't dismiss you, I dismiss you. Except that was never true. Literally, the purpose of having a bell system is so students know when they are dismissed. Dismissed or not, if I'm not in Mr. Banerjee's room in 5 minutes, I'm late. Here in Canada, the CN Tower is the world's tallest freestanding structure, that the US-Canada border is the world's longest undefended frontier, and that all NHL players are Canadian born, and Canadian NHL teams always win the Stanley Cup. Wait, what is the longest undefended border then? Cough into your hand. That's disgusting. You should cough into your elbow. That the huge country on the map is called Soviet Union and the other one Persia. That was somewhere around 2005. So it was at this moment no true anymore. Teacher was just so freaking lazy that she didn't update the cards. How old are you, out of curiosity? Iran hasn't been referred to as Persia since the 1950s. How to write a good essay. The standards are completely different once you hit college. Writing papers in school that had any minimum length requirements is the primary reason I struggle with business writing in my career. I'm now way too wordy and can't communicate concisely and end up just overwhelming people and having my critical emails be ignored instead. One of my final business classes in college flipped the script. Papers couldn't be longer than 2 pages. It was possibly the most helpful business class that I took because it taught us how to be concise. Tip for you, try to use bullet points instead of paragraphs. When writing more complex or long emails, it's easier for others to read. If I ever forgot a pencil or a pen, whenever I ask my teacher to go get one from my locker, they would say, you think in college they are just going to let you leave class to go get one? They aren't, and you're just going to have to sit there without one. Well, come to find out, when I got into college, I could just get up and leave the class whenever I wanted. I didn't even need to ask to go to the bathroom, freaking liars. That we are individually special. Individually special in a way that doesn't matter, just like real snowflakes. It totally matters. Our world depends on different people having different skills. I'm not better than anyone, in an absolute sense. I'm better than many people at certain things. That has allowed me to find a profession that pays well and has fairly modest competition. There are people who could never do my job and I could never do their job. The world needs people of all types, and even things like entertainment and recreation. How horrible would all be if everyone liked exactly the same stuff? If you like camping, for example, it's already hard enough to find places that aren't overcrowded. We're lucky that some people would find camping to be their worst nightmare. Peking is the capital of China. Other Chinese cities were named Canton, Chongqing, Nanking, etc. But you won't find any of these names on maps anymore. Peking is technically a different way to say / spell Beijing as far as I know. It's true. Beijing is very much still the capital of China, whether you transcribe it as Peking or Beijing.